Can anyone hear? Oh, okay. Sound check. All right. Hi, everyone. Do you guys know that we're live physically, but also we're also streaming on LinkedIn? Fun stuff. Technically, I'm 2 minutes early, but I just want to know how far or close my hand needs to be from my microphone so that I don't break your ears. And also for people watching this on stream, comment if you could hear the sound. I won't answer because I'm not supposed to look at my phone, but someone will. Audio has been a thing, and slowly it's getting much better, so this is awesome. Hi, everyone. Yes, go for it. You can sit here, whichever seat you want, but it's going to be one of those. How's everyone? Awesome. Yay! Is everyone? How many people are here from LA? Yay! We got one. I assume because apparently this is LA Tech Week, so I would assume that the people from LA are in LA events for LA Tech Week. That makes a lot of sense. It's funny because here in SF, every day is Tech Week. We can't escape it. That's why in SF we have film weeks. Those are rare. So we still have a minute.
Well, we can get started early. Yeah.
This is part of LA Tech Week too.
This is.
Actually, we have about 100. Yeah, we actually have about 100 people who signed up to be part of the podcast from LA Tech Week. So. So welcome, everyone.
Okay,
Come
now
on,
we're
let's
good.
have some.
1, 2, 3, okay?
How about a fun?
All right.
How about a fun?
Well,
How about
let's
a
wait
fun
till-
picture?
Oh.
All right, welcome everybody to the 110th episode of Silicon Zombies, where we bring you the best brains from the Bay to beyond. Each week, we connect live with brilliant thinkers, innovators, and entrepreneurs to demystify emerging technology, as well as driving access to our community. So we're coming here from San Francisco, and we want to give a shout out to about the 100 or so folks down in LA Tech Week, and also want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Nicodex, which does your remote product development. So check out nicodex.com, and Primero Negocios if you're looking to get local customers. So check out Primero Negocios. We'll certainly have them in the show notes. Also want to do a shout out for the House of Web3. So do we have George here? Awesome.
George.
Let's give a big warm welcome to George. George, here we go.
Thank you so much. Welcome to the House of Web3. Show of hands, who has heard of the Graph Network before? Awesome. So Edge and Node, we're the initial team behind the Graph. The Graph is a decentralized data querying protocol. We decided to open the House of Web3 as a way to give back to the community, really have a physical space where serendipitous connections are made, where people build their businesses and really shape the future of the decentralized internet. At House of Web3, we have this monthly award called the Co-Creator of the Month Award, and I want to present it to our dear friend Jason. He's going to be traveling and leaving the country very soon. So we just want to give him a quick shout out. Appreciate all he's done. You want to say a few words?
I'm honored, and I love this place. You guys should come work here.
Thank you, Jason. Congratulations. Remember to follow us on Twitter at the House of Web3.
Yeah, so if you just came to this part, I invite you to take a look at this beautiful place. Do you all just appreciate the beautiful art here? Yeah, there's about over $1 million, multi-million dollars worth of art at this beautiful place. And, you know, it just feels so good. It's designed by a woman. Yeah. So you'll see, like, plants and just beautiful furniture and everywhere. So welcome, everyone. Like I said, feel free to take a walk around. And, you know, there's also opportunity to join the House of Web3 also and become a member. All right? So.
Great. So you want to do some quick introductions? So, Ruby, you want to kick us off here? Or we could start. We'll start with Peter.
We'll leave it to you. I'll leave it to you, Nick. Please, you go ahead.
The show will diverge. Let's start how we usually do it, and then the show will diverge into however it diverges. So, I think I'm used to you.
My
opening
name's
up.
Peter
Yeah,
Wang.
Nick, why don't you introduce all of us, all right?
Sure thing. So first and foremost, we've got Ruby Yeh, who's the founder of Joyia.ai, and really just phenomenal progress of what we've seen from Ruby in the past couple months, just bringing the community together to help people with mental health. So super important stuff. And then we've got Payhuan Shiao from Immortal Studios. We've got like a real life celebrity with us here, so this is like super exciting for us. And then of course we've got Peter Wang as well, who runs TikTok at Intel. And I'm Nick Larson, CRO at Unity Central. We've got Steven around here too, who is our head of design. So I guess with that, maybe should we kick things off? Do you want to give a little background on yourself, Payhuan? Or?
So do you want to share with people who are new to Silicon Zombies what Silicon Zombies is?
That's true, right. So we've been doing this about 2.5 years. And the neat thing is being able to bring people together, right? So like, what do entrepreneurs and investors need? Well, they need connections. They need information, and we bring them both. So it's really about access. In fact, Sharon Byers is the one who came up with this concept of access. And so I think we do that really well, and just leading with value. And all the people in here are hand-selected. So make sure to meet everybody here. It's definitely has an energy of give first, and this is a really special community, and I'm so pleased to be a part of it myself. So if you want to check out siliconzombies.com, that might be a good place to start. We are at 5 p.m. typically, the first and third Tuesdays of every month.
Can we start with the name? My imagination's gone wild as to why zombies. I think I have an idea, but I'd love to hear from the horse's
please
mouth.
share this story. 'Cause I feel like I've been telling my version of why it's called Silicon Zombies. It's a little bit different, so I'd love to set the record straight. as
Yeah.
to
I'm a
why.
diehard zombie fan.
Do
I'm
you
a
think we
fanboy.
maybe
All things
not to
related
jump
to from George Romero, Night of the Living Dead. So I'm really dying to hear this.
Yeah, of course. So it's not too complicated. Zombies love brains, and so do we. So like smart people, right? So we have a ton of really smart, passionate people. And the kind of funny thing is, it's like if you get like deep tech people, they'll say zombies. Isn't that kind of like a company that has raised capital and has not really kind of done explosive growth? Well, that's true, but that's not what we're about. We're about getting that explosive growth and learning from really smart people. And we have a lot of those really smart people in our community, and a lot of them are here too.
And that's so funny because I've been telling people we're called Silicon Zombies because we could take anything dead and come it back to life.
Like CPR.
Yeah.
And Peter came up with Night of the
By the
Living
way,
Founder,
I still
which
have
is
a
pretty
pulse,
clever too.
So just
I'll take your word for it.
Yes.
So, do you think maybe not to jump the gun, but it'd be really cool to figure out how maybe zombies could be a part of Immortal Studios?
I've actually given it a lot of thought. One of the things that we are doing is we're building the world's first interconnected martial arts fantasy shared universe. So I think that the comparables would be Marvel and DC for people who are familiar with it. But there is such a thing as superhero fatigue, which is in full force. If you look at Gen Y, Gen Z, if you look at youth behavior, those of you who are parents here, just look at what your kids are reading and what the things they care about. You know why we exist and why we are blowing up the way that we are. Is that there's been a sea change in popular culture. So we have built kind of the home to the genre that's been around for thousands of years. An original product of China was known as Wuxia, but Wuxia has been the macro assimilator of all things heroic and action-oriented, so it inspired things like, of course, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, of course, The Matrix, of course, Star Wars, of course, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which cleared 7 Oscars. This is also John Wick, the biggest movie in the world, and you're starting to scratch yourself like, where is the shared universe? So Wuxia exists in so many different silos right now. We're now basically essentially creating the big tent that's pulling it all together under one big interconnected roof, and that's called Immortal. And the zombie thing is part of what I do, not just as the founder and CEO, but as the creator. I'm always looking at ways to really mix it up and have fun while we're doing really meaningful work. And I'm always fascinated with, because I do these kind of survival scenarios in my head. For a real zombie person, you would know part of the fun when you're watching, the Walking Dead or whatever your favorite zombie show is, you're putting yourself in the story. What will I do if this happened? What will I do? So the big thing is, what would happen if zombies went up against real superb martial artists or legendary immortal swords people with swords flying? So I'm actually designing one of our books, and it's not going to be up for the next 2 years because we just did our whole series of launches until the end of next year, but I suspect something will come of that, and I'll reference you guys when it happens.
It reminds me of Kingdom.
Yes, well, the Korean acceptance period, and I thought the martial arts could have been better, more fantastical,
Yeah.
and of course you're going to have, yes.
So if we can step back a little bit, because, Payhuan, you're like the unique person. You're like, your whole life has brought you to this point of creating this Immortal Studios that really is taking advantage of new technology to bring out this ancient future wisdom of this Asian wisdom, literally Asian philosophy. So can you take us back a little bit about your life and what brought you to this point of creating this next generation Marvel-like AI Web3 studio? What
Wow,
brought you here?
That's a big question.
Payhuan, what's your origin story?
My origin story is I actually was born into the genre, so it's kind of, this genre chose me because my father was one of the top creators in the genre. I remember my earliest memories of my dad is kind of cool. Was I went to see this big Saturday movie matinee show. It was, really fantastic movie, and I saw my father's name on the screen. It's like, wow, this is my father's movie. I think he's okay. So look, I was deeply infused by this world known as Wuxia. So this is the ancient story of the martial hero genre. So this was the reason why I got invested in Chinese literature and culture. I think I started reading when I was 3 years old. So I read all of his books and all of his contemporaries. And the people who trafficked in our house were legendary kung fu masters or fortune tellers or Taoist sages. So the idea that this world was actually fantasy wasn't. It was my reality. So superimpose that against a kid who grew up in Hollywood, was playing electric guitars and skateboarding. There was this ancient part of me that was kind of developing. So that's kind of my origin story. And of course, professionally, I started off working in politics. That was my way of expressing Xia, this notion of chivalry and help for the masses. I was actually getting ready to run for office here in California many years ago. I did have a pretty successful political career as a young up-and-comer. And I was getting ready to run for office. My campaign manager was hired. I was ready to go. I was well prepared for that moment. And then I had this big epiphany that the more I got closer to political power, the more powerless I felt. This is not to denigrate public officials. It's just really to say that, wow, I thought leadership really meant a lot more, and I realized that a true leader, or the beginning of leadership begins with thought. So it's about thought leadership, in that the impact I wanted to make didn't really know borders or barriers. It was really about emotions, and it was about an awareness. It was about consciousness, in that the vanguard for that would be in storytelling. And I happen to have these ideas in my mind about movies and stories that I had no idea that I would even go down this path. I said, well, you know what? I'm just going to see it through. I'm going to write these ideas down. I'm going to hire a screenwriter just to develop the ideas. And within 6 months, they both sold. Wow. I was like, okay. So no more suits. So that began my entree as a creator. So then I started to create. Then I learned how to be a movie producer, and I was able to see some of my ideas from beginning to being distributed in movie theaters. So I was able to do that a few times. Then slowly went up the chain and became a serial entrepreneur when I really became a movie producer. one of the things I did was I actually produced the first ever U.S.-Chinese co-production. So navigating the Hollywood and Chinese markets was one of the things that really fascinated me. And of course, this also plays to a lot of these Wuxia roots. So you fast forward to where I'm at today. I kind of prepared for this moment really well. I've been a movie producer. I've run and sold production companies. I've been a film fund manager. I've been then a private equity investor in building different ventures across different silos. And when my father passed away 4 years ago, I had this big epiphany. When your father's about to leave the world, you really think about like what's truly, truly important. And the realization I came to is like the one big thing in my life that I would not be okay doing was not doing Immortal. At that time, Immortal was a company in like 4 or 5 different companies I was running or chairing or what have you. This was like that one thing that really sang to me. And so I decided to quit everything else. I was going to really focus on this one thing that truly, truly mattered on so many different levels. It was not just an extension of who I am. It's also an extension of what I think the world needs. And I believe storytelling, kind of the reason I love politics, storytelling is just one of those last places that is still sacred and unique. And I think about somebody who can be touched in a really meaningful way that I may never meet. And if I can be involved in someone and telling a story that's going to help that person see the light or see some opportunity. For us, it's really about awakening that hero that's hidden in everybody. So that really, really is exciting for me and for us and our team. We often talk about this person that we'll never meet, but whose lives may be turned around as a result of interacting with one of our characters. And through their journeys, begin to see their lives in a completely different way. And that's kind of the timeless message of Wuxia, and it's been doing it for thousands of years. And this moment, I'm a parent, my daughter's 14, and I spend a lot of time with her kids. We just, with the help of one of our advisors here, Mark Young, we assembled our first youth advisory council. So spending a lot of time with teenagers and young adults, I think what really, listening to their music, what became very clear to me is their world is a very dystopian, very nihilistic or hedonistic world. The prevailing culture is actually not your friend. If you really are looking for contentment, happiness, and fulfillment and empowerment. So I think this is a real opportunity through the genre that's trending to be the #1 genre globally, to really step into it and do what only stories can do across all media formats. So I wanted to start off by talking about the creative, because as a creative person, as a serial founder and a creator, I really value creation and innovation, and I don't think it's replicable by machines. That's a starting point, because I think we can debate whether machines have souls or not, but I think for practical purposes, I think that's kind of the initial spark of Immortal. But the things that technology can do these days is just so extraordinary. I think, Bill, we were just having this conversation about how Hollywood is still very much stuck in the 20th century when your uncle was responsible for running MGM. Those are the studios I actually walked past as a kid who went to Hollywood High School. I really thought about, so I think this new wave of technology, whether it's artificial intelligence or Web3 or data analytics, has given us the ability to do something that's super extraordinary. And it's kind of apropos today. We're here in San Francisco having this conversation concurrently being part of LA Tech Week. So I'd love to say this because our work broadly is about uniting the East and West. We're taking this ancient genre that's come from the East, embedded within it are like what I consider the real blossoms and flowers of Eastern culture. Enlightenment, empowerment, aesthetics. And by the way, the empowerments are real. If you go through and if you really think about what's happening in neuroscience today, whether it's breath work or psychedelics, we're seeing that this is the wave of human evolution. And if you go drill down deeper and deeper, you'll find that, these were all Kung Fu techniques. Every single one of them. Every single thing that's being talked about as some kind of some kind of new invention has been creating super people throughout millennia through the practice of kung fu. So this is part of the same phenomenon, if you will.
So, and bringing this back to you real quick, since I know you talked a lot, and there's a lot of things
I can do this all day long.
I know, right? And there's so many moments I wanted to interject and dig deeper with you. But real quick, would love to have you talk to the audience about what is Immortal Studios? How did you come about it? What is your vision with it, and how is it going to change everything?
Okay. So, yes, broadly, Immortal Studios, we are a multi-platform entertainment studio. We're focused on this timeless genre known as Wuxia, the martial hero genre. Of course, I've already talked a little bit about the kind of storytelling that is spawned in this very unique moment. This has actually been the action-adventure engine of all things anime and manga. So here's maybe a way to really understand this particular moment. We're focused on a genre, and we're creating an interconnected universe. We call it a storyverse because there's many characters and stories that populate this shared universe. And we adapted a strategy that I'm very, very proud of that I think is appropriate for our conversation today is we took advantage of comic books and graphic novels as the way to build a minimum viable product engine that Hollywood has never had. As a former movie producer, creator, and investor, I was always very cognizant of how risky it was to put so much money behind a piece of storytelling that never really had the kind of traction, engagement that Silicon Valley does. You guys do something called the MVP. You're able to interface with customers very early on. You're able to iterate as you go. You're able to make adjustments and monetize and building this perfected property. But if you think about it, this is not how Hollywood movies are made. This is not how content is made. This is probably one of the most expensive decisions you can make in terms of spending money per day, but it's never really been, there's never been an MVP. So one of the things areas of innovation that we're taking is this kind of MVP approach to building out this interconnected martial arts fantasy storyverse. So when we actually have this, and the other differentiating factor for us is one of my first acts in finding this company was I actually bought out my father's entire IP library.
Wow.
So 61 stories, that's already spawned 31 movies and TV shows as kind of the foundational IP catalog. So in Hollywood, of course, there's the creativity, but anybody knows that it just comes down to a few things. It comes down to IP now. IP is really where Hollywood really, really comes down to. So we started with an abundance of content that we control all the media rights to, and that makes us very different. Because in this day and age where everyone wants to be in this space, because you can see the data, you can see the trend, is this authentic layer and this depth of character and understanding and authenticity that really makes us very, very unique. And I'm happy to share for the first time in this live audience that we are in the process of partnering with the Shaolin Temple. That is the that is the birthplace of the original mythology of Kung Fu. So we are in the process of just really creating some of the biggest alignments there is. One of the best IP libraries, the Shaolin Temple. So really, this is kind of a light we're broadcasting to the world, that this genre, we're really thinking about how to create it for the next 1,000 years. And technology is going to be a big piece of that. So it's not going to be the only driver, but it's going to be a major piece of this, this stool, if you will.
So are the stories going to be from fiction, or is it kind of quasi-fiction / like historical events?
It's both. It's both. For instance, in some of our books, we have 5 titles out now. We'll have 15 about a year from now. And so it's been an amalgamation. We've taken certain historic characters that people know very well. For instance, we put Bodhidharma, the co-founder of the Shaolin Temple, as one of our characters. We also chose the Boxer Rebellion, the home of the Boxer Rebellion, which happens to be my ancestral home, as one of the historic pieces. So it's a mixture. By the way, San Francisco is also written into the Storyverse because this is the home of our first movie, our character that is giving rise to our first movie, Assassin G. San Francisco is the home of Assassin G, and as a lifelong native of LA, of course, I've chosen LA as the new Gotham, if you will.
Yeah.
Payhuan, so one of the things that I was very excited about, because I've been a community person, all right, through all of this. And one of the things that's very exciting about Web3 is true community and giving power back to the community, you know, through like distributed autonomous organizations. So I was so excited when I heard that how you're going to be integrating, because we're, you know, part of this session is about how the AI and Web3 is going to be integrated. So can you talk about how you're going to be empowering the creators who you love so much, right? On the one hand, you have this amazing IP, you know, from your father's library and these other famous people. So on the other hand, could you share with us, yeah, how the ordinary community and the fandom, because we know people who are like, you know, followers of these comics are raving fans, right? So how are you going to incorporate this
Sure.
technology to really empower your community?
I'd be happy to do that, especially in a place called the House of Web3. I consider myself a Web3 adherent, so and spiritually, I'm deeply committed to the ideals of Web3, especially when it comes to personal empowerment. So I think Web3 is almost like the natural genre for Wuxia. We launched by going to the fans first. So I wanted, you know, our first activity was to build a fandom or a community composed of diehard fans. So that was our first order, and we wanted to build our first community from Comic-Con, in which we successfully did. So throughout our initial launch, we were not looking at a tech layer. I was really looking at fandom because I wanted to be with the fans who was driving these global innovations. So after we built our first community of real fans who are basically still existing in 2.0 and getting to know their wants and needs, what's broken about it, we're now on the cusp of launching a Web3 token-gated community that's tailored to what the fans want. And so through extensive polling to kind of our community in the tens of thousands, I won't call it a community in the traditional sense. These are our great customers. They're paying, they're overpaying, they're collecting, and they're socializing amongst themselves. So we actually polled this community very extensively. We figured out, they told us the 10 things that they really cared about. And these are the 10 things that actually can be uniquely realized through Web3 protocols without using crypto bro talk.
What were those 10 things?
I'll say the biggest thing that people want is actually not co-creation of stories. They want to connect with the creators.
Oh, interesting.
They want to sit with the creators. They want to be a sounding board. They want to be first.
Was that surprising to you?
It wasn't surprising, but I didn't. A little bit, the extent of it, and of course from that is there is collectability, their interest, and they want to hear things first. They want to be consulted, and about 10% of them, less than 10% of them, would actually like to co-develop stories. So through our our community protocol, we've now designed a unique offering called the Immortal Order that speaks to the 10 things that they want, and we figured out a technology layer that does not require our fans to be crypto bros. It does not require them to have wallets. It does not require them to understand the technologies. We just figured out a way to really give them what they want without that middle tech layer. So this puts us, I believe, in the vanguard position of really popularizing Web3.
Would you ever be
at the
open
mass
to?
level.
Would you ever be open to using that 10% or so to create new storylines in the future?
Absolutely.
And also, what would that look like?
We're actively doing that. I hand-selected a number of creators, co-creators, and we just slated them for our next slate of content. So I've chosen from the creators we were able to interact with, who came up with really compelling ideas now, and we're going to incubate them inside our community through point systems now. And keep in mind, we've already done 6 crowdfunding campaigns. So we essentially built our community through Kickstarter, through engaging the crowd. We've done one crowdfunding campaign, so we already have we have many, many investors. They show up as one item on our cap table, but we've been, I wouldn't say experimenting, we've been laying the groundwork for a groundswell. So like one of the philosophies of Immortal is top down and bottom up. So we're executing a Hollywood level top down approach by being aligned with IP, being aligned with the best premium creators, distribution, and just being able to package and the ability to deliver what Hollywood always has while we're developing this bottom up, which is engaging fans early on. And through this kind of the Kickstarter layer, the crowdfunding layer, the crowd sales layer, we've actually laid a foundation for allowing mass participation at a level that's unparalleled. What makes us different than, I think, a lot of other Web3 practitioners is that we're not just Web3. If you look at our team, if you look at our approach, we are legitimately creating premium content in Hollywood. It's one thing to come into a short story or with people who've never done it before. It's another thing to do it at this level, because I think the opportunity is to step up where Marvel and DC have left off and deliver the new global storyverse that fans and people are waiting for.
So that's wonderful.
This is the extra sticky layer. I get
Yeah.
so passionate thinking about it, because I think about, imagine 10,000 people or many, many more who are actually deputized, incentivized to be part of the Immortal Storyverse.
So I think the part that's very exciting is they're not only supporting, giving their input and co-creating if they want to have that opportunity, they're really becoming micro-owners.
They are.
Micro-owners.
We just launched to celebrate Asia Pacific Heritage Month, our first fan co-created mashup. You know, one of the really exciting things that happened about 4 months ago was a gentleman named Bob Harris, who's a legend in the fandom because he's the only human alive who's been editor-in-chief of Marvel and editor-in-chief of DC. So he literally developed those universes. He sat with the Avengers. You know, he largely credited for taking X-Men to its glory days. So he is our new editor at large. So we took a talent like him and says we just dreamt out loud. It's like, imagine we want to bring together a group of diverse AAPI teenagers with their own unique stories. We're bringing in Filipino characters. We're bringing in Vietnamese characters, Koreans. Like one of our big social goals is full representation. And of course, this is a genre that comes from the East. So we wanted to kind of fill this current void of not really positive Asian images and faces on global screens everywhere. We're kind of stepping into that.
And speaking of representation, that's like such a great segue into this part, because though hearing you like talk about your project actually makes me like really excited for it to actually come about, because when I was growing up, I grew up with Wuxia films all my life, mainly. And
I could tell by your top knot, dude.
Honestly, this was just because of convenience, but I also do realize
you got like a Taoist sage house thing going on.
Oh, that's exactly what I was working for. Do you also like my Journey to the West shirt? Growing up, like I didn't realize that the reason why I loved watching martial arts films or wuxia films in general is because there wasn't a lot of people who looked like me in Hollywood in the 90s, in the early 2000s. And since you have such a unique experience, you were in politics, I'm assuming, before your extent into Hollywood. So that was...
But I grew up in Hollywood. I actually went to Hollywood High School.
Oh.
So it was like a really interesting thing.
I would love to hear your experience with like what it felt like, either like, you know, being Asian in politics or being Asian in Hollywood, and if that's like affected your decision to with Immortal Studio.
Well, this I think it's a natural continuation of the same thing. You know, I feel like I've had one career, which is making the world a better place through whatever avenues that I felt really passionate about at any particular time at the mass level. So politics and culture certainly blends into that. So yes, I've, as probably one of the only Asian faces in the state legislature, or actually on Capitol Hill, when I started my political career, I was very cognizant of the fact that I was the other. I was the other, and of course,
Right.
having the same experience in Hollywood. After a while, you just got used to it, and now, of course, it's a different time and age, and I
Right.
think I'm just really grateful we're in a time where it's not just preaching to the choir, and I feel very passionate about this because I'm a human. I'm a global citizen first. I'm a human being first before I'm any color, before any kind of political agenda, and I think because of certain political trends and histories in the world, we've now balkanized into just, the peace that might have been stereotyped or whatever. But I'm really proud of the fact that through Wuxia, we're able to share something that's just not good for Asian representation, that's good for the, it's
Right.
just great storytelling, and it's great. It's an amazing part of our global culture that actually really balances things at a level that's extraordinary.
And one thing that you mentioned earlier, is something I really think is awesome, is even like with Wuxia, I can see how the trajectory of films could veer primarily towards China. I'm really glad that you actually mentioned you wanted to highlight other communities
Yes.
that are
No.
like, I'm sure, for example, like
Yeah.
Silat, Muay Thai,
Yeah.
and all of
Manga.
those come.
Manga, which is
Yeah.
so big.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And
Right?
all of those
So-
come
so-
with their own
Yes.
people.
And of course, as a member of a minority here, I know I have the pains of being underrepresented, and you know that the only way through that is representation. So just telling diverse stories, and it doesn't end just with the Asian community. Like, we're launching our first African and African American hero this coming year. We're bringing non-Asian heroes into the verse, and we started the universe with a Hapa girl, which is a mixed Eurasian girl, because my daughter is that. So mixed races. So there's ultimately the vision that really truly brings the global village together in the Immortal Storyverse.
And
Yeah.
one thing
So-
would be great to define for people who isn't familiar is, what is wuxia? I remember you kind of blew my mind with this when we were like at another event, but like I would love to hear your definition.
Well, Wuxia, Wu actually is the Chinese character for martial, and Xia is roughly hero. Of course, when we say hero, it's kind of a loaded term because we're thinking a leotard, we're thinking of some very visible activity of heroism. But I think in the Asian or in the Chinese sense, Xia has kind of a hidden meaning. It's really somebody who's showing up for the public good, but not necessarily always in the public limelight. So I think there's a more hidden dimension to Wuxia. So the martial hero is roughly the name that's given to this. I think it started really as a lifestyle, because to really understand Wuxia, you have to get into an understanding of how China worked. China's had this amazing unbroken lineage of Kung Fu, roughly known as Kung Fu. So through cultivation, by how we breathe, there's a history of creating superhumans from a set of practices that people regularly practice. And as these people became quite powerful, they started to be invested in worldly affairs. They could come and adjudicate wrongs. They can do some amazing feats. And these stories then became legends and lore, or they became these stories became famous, and then storytellers would then tell these stories.
Like the water margin.
Like the
Sure,
water
Wuxia.
margin is one example, and we could name all these wuxia novels that came from a lot of these human endeavors. They range anything from things that we could practically see today to things that are deeply metaphysical or extraordinary, and all the way up to the Monkey King, and they all have some kind of continuity. So this is roughly kind of how wuxia spawned. And in the past 100 years, of course, this unbroken tradition existed in books, and in plays, and in stories, and then, of course, with radio and television and cinema came around, it became the stuff of that writers wanted to write about. And my father kind of stepped in as a continuation of that, and many of his contemporaries. And so this also gave rise to the 70s Kung Fu cinema that became, that Bruce Lee became part of. Then it was introduced to the West. When David Carradine started in Kung Fu, we of course, everybody of a certain
remember
age.
that.
You remember Black Belt Theater on Saturday mornings. This became a global sensation.
Wasn't
And then-
Sammy Hung in there? What is his name?
Yeah, Sammo.
Sammo Hung, yeah.
Sammo Hung. So it's so many different characters. So and in the past 30 years, wuxia became the #1 genre for MMORPGs, for games. So this kind of tradition just continues. We just saw it. It's now part of the Marvel universe. It's Shang-Chi. It's everything everywhere all at once. So in a way, it's become ubiquitous.
It's
And-
quite literally everything
yes.
everywhere all at once.
And where and by the way, it's embraced by everybody.
Yeah.
It's
So
not
Payhuan-
just for Asians.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
85% of our users are non-Asians, and I'm really proud of that.
You know, talking about this and the proliferation, and you're talking about, you know, the culture, right? There's a shift in culture. So he was telling me that, you know, that there's such a movement now towards this Asian-based, I'm going to call it comic books, all right, just to use layperson's terms, okay? So he was saying there was the youth was going towards this genre, and they were moving away from Marvel. I thought, oh, come on. I think he's being overly optimistic, right? You know, in terms of his business potential. But then I was in an event, there was a bunch of people like, you know, in their 20s and stuff, and that's what they were saying. You know, they brought it up themselves, saying, oh, like Marvel and DC Comics are passé, that they're really into this anime and manga and this wuxia. Now, what do you think is creating that among the youth? And that's, you know, they're kind of like cultural leaders, right? So what is happening there?
Well, it's a complicated question. I think I've really tried to understand it. There's a few things. One is that this particular genre actually has a beginning, middle, and an end. The stories actually bring satisfaction. It's not like Batman just goes on forever and ever, and it never wraps around. So there's a continuity. So for collections, but just philosophically, and I would say even emotionally, I think it's a more malleable. It's a friendlier format for the heart. It's a more intimate. It's kind of how what Ang Lee does to storytelling. You know, I think there's a whole Eastern overlay that when you're reading and connecting to these stories, you really connect to them on an emotional level that's a little bit deeper. And for this particular genre, and keep in mind, wuxia has been like the action-adventure engine of manga and animes that I think intuitively, when people get into superhero comics or these stories, you're never seeing that as Tony Stark up there. It's me. There's a big part of wish fulfillment, and I would posit to say that wuxia is a way more democratized, accessible version because the heroes of wuxia are everyday people, just like you and me. And by virtue of the choices they make, the things that they do, they can actually be empowered. So it is the ultimate wish fulfillment.
Is that why you think there's been superhero fatigue? Because it seems inaccessible to have like a superpower, and kids want to say like, or kids want to feel, hey, maybe that could actually be me.
After a while, I think you see one movie superhero film, you kind of seen. I think it's just that after a while you get a little bit tired of it. And keep in mind, I'm a big fan too. I still watch everything that comes out, and I'll continue to do so. I think that the fatigue is. It's a combination of the things that I shared with you, and of course, pop culture always is bending on spectacle. And I think as a Marvel and DC fan, I feel like all those movies are turned to 100 from the first frame. The storytelling wise is almost inundated in you with a bunch of data and sensory overwhelm. But if you really drill through the stories, there isn't much more content. And I think this is against this backdrop that a little film no one heard of called Everything Everywhere All at Once that came and just kind of blew people away because it was ultimately, the high fantasy was amazing, the action sequences were amazing, but ultimately I think it was the emotionality, was the depth of the human experience that really, really came through.
Yeah, Peter mentioned that, well, I'll let you share the story about how you connected with your mom about this specific movie.
So we consider ourselves, Everything Everywhere All at Once is kind of it's like a very close cousin to our work at Immortal Studios. And we had a massive geek out experience when I did have the chance to meet the Daniels.
I recommend anyone who, especially if they're like American-born Chinese or Asian American, to watch Everything Everywhere All at Once with your parents and then have a talk afterwards. It's very. I'm not gonna say any more about this. It was just very cathartic for me.
Yeah.
And also to your point earlier about community building, you know, over the weekend I met this guy. His name I think is Josh Stone. He actually organized 3 major friend groups just to watch that film and have that discussion. So I think my observation is that pop culture, the global pop cultural stage has a lot of different contenders right now, but no one is really trying to solve this issue of how do you bring fulfillment and joy and happiness and empowerment to the masses that's so very much needed right now. Because I think it's always like, this is cool, this is sexy, this is hip, and all of these things. That's fine, but I think fundamentally, I feel like everybody's kind of vacated that stage. So there isn't anyone really thinking, how can storytelling be meaningful? How can storytelling actually serve the masses? And we're really coming at it from that point of view. And I believe the creators who actually have the heart right now will be richly rewarded, and it's super meaningful work.
And speaking of community, what a great segue, because you guys have been sitting here for about 40 minutes hearing us talk. I would love to throw the mic back into you guys, and if you guys have any questions, like in the physical or digital audience space for Payhuan, now's your time.
I actually do have one last question for you tonight, all right?
What, after Ruby,
So-
then?
Yeah,
I think I know what you want to ask me.
Because, because the whole theme and why a lot of LA people signed up is, how is AI as a technology going to help create what you just said, actually, more heart, more humanity? Because that's the big question in everybody's mind. People are afraid of technology. They're afraid of AI. So how can it actually create more of that for the creators?
I think my starting point was I don't know that machine learning is going to deliver you heart on some level, and I feel like that's the creator's job. But what I believe, I'll tell you a very practical use case of AI that we're developing,
Great.
which is one of the most exciting things that's happened in our company. I think we started by talking about our library. I literally have enough books to fill up, a big chunk of this wall. And so we have 61 novels. And if you've seen Chinese wuxia novels, you know they're long. Like one title is like this thick, which could be 10 books. One book is a universe unto itself with hundreds of characters, thousands of different techniques in history and relationships. So imagine 61 novels like that, and this is like my father's entire output. So we're in the process of basically creating our own AI bot that is going to become the master of everything that's ever been written in every possible derivation. So imagine that as a universe building tool. So just in the course of doing this, we've already saved, I would say, a few $1 million in the translation development costs, and now in the process of training this, we now have our own proprietary brain trust that's only going to get smarter and better, and we're layering into it all of our scenarios, all of the different characters, all of the modernization tools. That's really going to first empower me as the creator, just as the creator of the storyverse and scene for future derivations. It's really put me on steroids as a creator. And now after I'm satisfied with it, and after it's trained, after I'm comfortable with the technology and what it can or cannot do, because I think everything is hypothetical. I actually spend time in co-creation, in sessions with the chat, with different protocols, just to test the limits and see what's entailed. And I can say right now we're still early in the journey, but I'm very confident just by having this Immortal Storyverse bot that we're already pushing the boundaries. And
Let's bring it out to the audience here. Just think we have a question.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for the sharing. It's a very inspiring journey. So I have a question, specifically that you say you were in the politics and then you switched to entrepreneurial journey, producer and stuff. So I try to be concise with my question, but having a small background in politics, I know that whenever you have an ideology at the beginning, you need to be in certain position to have impact finally in the world, right? But the journey that you made from the start until you reach this position corrupt you and astray you from finally the ideology that you have in the beginning. Then after that, I want to ask, like, you are a successful entrepreneur, then this switch, do you think that success finally can also corrupt you from your like beginning of your journey in entrepreneurship? You want to do impact and stuff, but the journey is so hard that it's probably when you arrive there, it's like your original idea is no more there. This is my question. Is it the same in politics? Is it in certain degree? If yes, like how we can avoid it? How you do that? Yeah, that's my question. I hope it's quite understandable. Thank you.
Well, look, I've actually been there before, so I think it's a very human experience to lose yourself when things are either very challenging or very easy. Or you can begin to believe the hype about yourself. You begin to, believe all kinds of untruths. So I think those things, that's part of the human experience. I don't think there's anyone, I can't certainly say anything that'll make those challenges for anybody go away. But I think when you do have a very clear vision and why you want to do it, the big why is very important. I'm incredibly fortunate that I think we're all very fortunate to be in this country, to have a basic level of security in our lives. I think it's really surrounding yourself with the right people who are actually going to hold you to that standard. And so we run that danger with Immortal, for sure. And I think about it all the time, and I don't think there's an easy way.
It's almost like when comedians, when they're poor, they're hilarious because they have to go through that struggle, and then they get wealthy, and then maybe they're out of touch.
Like Dave Chappelle.
No, I think Dave Spence. It will end. That's another.
And by the way, success is not the only thing that corrupts. I think failure can corrupt as well. It can lead you to feel like you can cut corners, or you can make some quick ones. So I don't think it's. I think that possibility exists, and this is where I think again the martial arts have a lot to say. It comes down to practice. The things that you hold valuable should be part of your everyday life. So for me, that means I start my mornings and end my days a certain way where I'm constantly reviewing my priorities. And I put a course before me that reminds me and that brings that energy to my body, to the choices that I make. And I'm very open with these values with my team and my friends and my advisors. So we are a very mission-based company.
Peter, to drill down a bit more on the AI and technology, specifically as it might relate to development of your films. Certainly unlimited, potential to a great extent, if you will, not just with generation of text and dialogue and things like that, but also with image and video generation of these.
In production, it's going to be enormous. I think the AI capabilities in production is going to be astronomical.
And
but that's when we're in production.
Sure. And of course, the other edge of the sword is the fact that one of the key issues in the writer's strike is that they don't want to let the production houses go crazy with using AI and compromising human creativity from a writing standpoint. So
that's right. Look, and it's a needed fight. It's a needed fight to adjudicate the very legitimate interests at stake. But I don't think we're going to be. I think it's a foregone conclusion that AI is already part of everybody's lives, including creators, whether they admit it or not.
Kind of a curious time
Yes.
for writers to go on strike, though, just as ChatGPT is getting so much momentum, right?
Yes. Well, look, AI wasn't the only reason that caused this. I think the streamers have been treating creators very poorly, from economics and guild rules that was not really in place. That was in place way before streamers became the prevalent theme. So what's going on in Hollywood is very, very. It's a very needed dialogue. For us at Immortal, we have our internal film studio, but we also employ many WGA writers who are actually writing comic books for us. So,
I also think that we're going to see a shift in what type of work is going to be considered valued. Like, I can say that as of myself, on paper, I am technically working in a more creative role. However, I was able to find my way into tech as a response to a need, and as Gen AI is starting to come out as and for the record, this is my own opinion, not who I represent. I'm just going to speak to no. My own personal opinion is that as generative AI is doing a really good job at taking over any roles that allow you to get information from point A and deliver it to point B, like, for example, paralegal or coding or whatever, there's a lot more of a need for a creative mindset, right? Because, right now, you try to tell ChatGPT to write a joke, it's gonna suck. Unless you really like that type of humor, then I guess, go you. But I think that it's gonna be, like what you said, Payhuan, it's gonna be a shift in how we use the technology.
I think what we've seen is that the floor has risen. So I think that we're used to a level of quality content. And by the way, in our business, the only content that you could actually monetize in the entertainment industry is what we call premium content. So I think the premium just got even more premium. And things don't become premium without the human touch. It's just that is not going to happen. And by the way, fans also don't follow chatbots. You can't say, "Oh, follow this chatbot. I'm a fan." I can imagine some future person. I don't think that speaks to the general fandom. I think general fans who actually follow something, you follow this because I like the way the creator thinks. I like the way what he or she stands for. I like the way. So those signature quality things are what people tend to follow, and for into the foreseeable future, we still need a human connection for fandom. Again, but I don't think there's a natural competition. I think that that competitive layer is actually not really there, and I'm putting forth an example of how we're coexisting synergistically with new technology, and it's really helping us do extraordinary things that at a budget and at a reduction of cost that's unparalleled.
So when Michael Jordan first got his shoe deal with Nike, they negotiated a percentage of the shoe, and that was the first time. That had never been done. What do you think the future of revenue share for future creators that are collaborating with studios like yours? What does that look like?
We're actually doing that right now. I won't throw out the bullet points. I'm having this active conversation with our business affairs. We already have made an allocation for future collaborators who are actually contributing. There's two different ways. There's multiple ways of doing it, right? There's co-creative, so you're involved in creating or augmenting or assisting in some kind of creation of IP, whether it's characters, scenarios, objects, weapons. There's a number of ways. And then the other part is proof of work. So if you're actually going to support us, if you're actually going to broadcast us, if you're going to be involved in marketing, that you would actually be rewarded on. And we've created special layers of within our financial waterfalls that's going to reward those kind of activities.
That's fascinating. Are there any other questions? Or yeah, go ahead.
I'll take both.
I get really excited thinking about fans who've been exploited this entire time, that they actually now will be honored and welcomed into the canon.
Hi, my name is Leslie, and I'm a comedian. And Nick, you're right. It comes from darkness, tragedy, and mental illness. That's where the funny comes from a lot of times. But my question is about your 14-year-old daughter. How involved is she in this, and are you afraid of any of the technology as far as her age and anything like that?
I am. She is not involved in, which is okay. I think I'm open to her involvement, but as a 14-year-old girl really has her own ideas about things. But as as somebody who studied brain science and very interested in those kind of conversations, I actually opted not to have her be exposed to social media, so she's not online. I mean, she has a phone, so she hasn't. Her brain has not been subject to the whims, the quick edits, and what have you of social media. We do talk about the impacts of technology quite a bit, and we do talk about the burden of her generation inheriting the world that's wildly out of balance and incredibly problematic.
Do you think that kind of makes social media like their forbidden fruit for her a little bit?
Look, I think we always run the danger of doing that, maybe. I mean, maybe. But I don't. I think I've raised her to. She understands now. I think she understands. So it's part of her lexicon. It's just like now at 14, we don't have to police it as much, and she's now happy that she has a little bit of freedom outside of social media, and she'll be there soon enough.
We have time for like one more question. Oh, go for it.
Well, thank you very much for speaking. It's very inspiring to see you explain your stories and where you come from and how you find your passion of movies and inspiring like anime. And may I ask, and first of all, my name is Abdus, and may I ask, what is your greatest advice for young, inspired entrepreneurs to find the purpose?
I have this theory that you always know, but you're often just not willing to hear it. So if I just turn it around on you, like what would you say if you did know what your purpose was? Can you say that?
It's about like for my definition, I would go exploring many places and meet new people, like this incredible event to find my purpose and interact with passionate people and also inspiring.
Yeah, I think that's a good way. I think you can give yourself some time, and there's exercises that you could actually go through, and I know a lot of people do that. So probing questions and exercises coupled with meeting other people, that if you give yourself that time in when you do that exercise, it will become very clear to you. But again, I would say that you probably already know. It just takes some external experiences to get you to that place. I hope that helps you.
Somebody is.
Oh, that was. I
Question?
mean, it is time.
Okay.
Do you want? All right, let's do one more.
There's several more.
Oh.
We have three
Yeah, let's.
questions.
Sure, why not?
I came here to see Peter. Met Peter in front of 555 California. Was that Thursday, Peter?
Yes. I go by Payhuan, by the way.
What's that?
I go by Payhuan. Just to, because other people would call me Peter again, and it gets confused, and then there's already a Peter up here.
Hi, I'm Peter.
Yes. Yes.
So, my background for everybody else in the room, I come from the world of YouTube and TikTok. We're very much on the business side, payments and economics. And him and I were talking about how he wants to leverage some influencers and creators to expand the reach. One of the things that I've been able to see over the last 16 years being in this side of the world is just how the audiences have shifted. People talk about Gen Z. There's a generation I'm even more emphatic about, Gen Alpha, who was born in 2010. And these are generations that their viewing behavior is absolutely different. To me, like Gen AI right now is just an Iron Man suit. And correct me if I'm wrong, to help you, like you said, supercharge your workflow. We see a future, let's think 10 years from now. Maybe Jensen Huang is a trillionaire,
But there's a world where why not have the content be really tailored to you? I'll give you an example. Little Mermaid. A lot of controversy around that, where there was a young black girl being Ariel. And there was another controversy where I guess some folks weren't very happy that the dubbing in certain languages were not done by an African-American girl. But in that world, why not have AI drive it so who cares what the color girl is? If you want to see a Korean girl play Ariel, let it be a Korean girl. Let the format of the story evolve to your taste. And so,
See, but
if you're telling a story,
that's a larger point, though, because democratizing or individually tailoring the content for one pushes back on this concept of art, as in art is something that's out there for everybody to respond to as it is, as opposed to so.
Does it have to be though?
It doesn't have to be, but I think ultimately there's different ways of. I think we're already in the long tail business, so everything is so fragmented that people who want to have that experience can and should and probably will on some level. For me, as a believer in stories, though, I think that there's a reason why we don't. I think there's power to stories that we don't shape ourselves.
But there could also be power of the story of how you want
Yes,
to
I'm
see
not negating your point, but I'm just saying that, like the reason why stories sometimes have a lot of power is because we don't necessarily influence. We're trying to figure them. They ring true to us, or they have truisms, and we assimilate, or we reflect on them. And by the way, there's times when you want to have that kind of unique tailor-fit experience, and then other times you just want to be in the presence of somebody who's thoughtful and creative, and you could just be either awed, pissed off, or reacting however you will to that piece of art. And that's one of the beautiful aesthetic experiences I think that enriches cultural life. So I think both of them, it really depends like what you want for dinner that night. There are times you want to have that experience, and I believe in our lifetime we're going to see it.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks,
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I work in the metaverse space and Web3. First of all, thank you for taking the inverse route of turning from an entrepreneur to politician. It seems to be its opposite route right now. So my question is this: what really caught my eye is you talk about token gating, right? So a user will purchase a token and get access to certain content. Another use case that's coming up, and that's quite interesting, is tokenizing the content itself and selling, like if you have a movie, fractional ownership of the movie and the movie rights. Have you thought or engaging that business aspect?
Look, my view is that just because it could be done technologically doesn't mean that it's the best choice when you're in the broad consumer market, because consumer markets are always driven by, I think, pieces of the technology that where you're solving something for the masses. And so when you look at the distribution grid of movies, I think Hollywood distribution is amazing. Through the various channels that are currently established, you actually can make a lot of money. So monetization and distribution are all very much part of the mix. So we're primarily interested in keeping those channels that are actually effectively distributing. And then if there are discrete opportunities that come up where the economics would favor the scenario that you described, we'd be interested in experimenting it. But as it stands right now, I don't believe in Web3 as a vehicle for distribution of mass global entertainment, which is we're in the business of.
Awesome. Well, I believe that is it. Do you want to queue up the? No, we're good on the online space. Nick, you're so good with the outro, and you have the phone.
Yeah, this is like super high tech here. But,
So high tech.
Yeah, I guess just really, overall, like really jazzed about what you're doing and pushing the envelope. Just to kind of wrap things up, what I have seen you do, and you and your team, it's like a bridge. You're bridging the old and the new. You're bridging ancient philosophy with new technologies, and that's really just pretty empowering stuff. So grateful for what you're doing. And where can folks learn more? How can they get involved to help us better understand here?
Well, the best way to connect with us right now would be through our Instagram account, where we're running all of our Discord and related activities. So for those of you who are interested in following our work, please go to Immortal Wuxia, Wuxia, on Instagram. And I am at Ancient Futurist on Instagram. So those of you who want blow by blow from me, I do that occasionally as well. And by the way, I want to just add to your point you said about bridging, which is a really huge word for us. If I may add, that we're uniting. Not just bridging because they're disparate. Through our approach is that there's no more division anymore. Right. Because the product that we're birthing right now is a full integration of absolute creativity and technology and product thinking. And we're not trying to bridge Silicon Valley and Hollywood. It's almost like Hollywood and Silicon Valley had a baby, and along with the East-West, and it's called Immortal. So it's in our DNA.
The bridge is already there.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of bridges.
Yeah, so if you want to see content, you can, anything you want, like maybe Little Mermaid with Nicolas Cage's face or something. You could do really anything.
I'm so down for that.
So awesome. Well, Payhuan, really appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
And be sure to check us out online. And thanks so much, Payhuan.
Thank you for being part of this. And I'm gonna tell you when we do the zombie kung fu thing, because that's real.
Which zombie are you going to use, the Western style or the Eastern style? I think Eastern style is funnier.
You come up with great questions. I would invite you onto the Immortal Order community, and you get points for leading that conversation.
All right, thanks again. Tune in 2 weeks from now, you guys. Thanks so much. Enjoy. Cheers.
So everybody, there's more food and drinks, so let's hang out and get to know each other and have a chance to, also talk to Payhuan if you have any questions for him.
And by the way, I also brought some of our earlier printed comics from Immortal, so if you're just interested in seeing what some of these stories are about, you can feel free to just check out some of our books.